The minute the wheels hit the ground in Boston, I started to sneeze. And I kept sneezing until I got to my car in the parking lot. Sneeze, sneeze, I couldn't stop. I finally got home to Methuen, and it stopped at the parking lot, and it was a Friday afternoon, and the weekend was fine. I didn't sneeze, but I got in the office on Monday morning and lifted the phone to my left ear, and all I heard was garbage. I couldn't make out what I was hearing. I put it to my right ear, it was fine. So I got the phone book out, found an ear doctor, made an appointment immediately, went down. He was in the Bay State Building in downtown Lawrence, and he had this little machine on his desk. He handed me earphones and started, raise your hand when you hear the tone, and that kind of inspection. And he got through, and he started asking me questions. Were you in the service? Yes. Were you in the artillery? No. What were you in? In the Air Force, ground training, link trainer. And he asked a few more questions. And then he said, I guess it's aging of the auditory nerve. Okay. Well, I left there, and I was not very happy with his opinion, but I decided, since the company paid for all my medical, why not get the best ear man in the world? So I started to make inquiries, and it turns out that the best ear doctor in the world was a Mass General Hospital 35 miles down the road. So I made an appointment, went down to the Mass General Hospital, and the difference here was that instead of having a little machine on his desk, Dr. Rubin, the expert, had this big room, soundproofed room with two technicians sitting outside at machines, and the same business with the earphones. Raise your hand when you hear the. He asked me these very similar questions, and I got through. Aging of the auditory nerve, he said. Because I had told him that's what this guy in Lawrence had said. He said, well, I have to agree with him. Aging of the auditory nerve. Okay. Well, the policy of the company was that its executives had to have a physical every year. And how I came to the New England Medical Center, I don't know, but that's where I started having my annual physicals. And the routine was always the same. I would come in at 8 o'clock and sit down with the quarterback, who was Dr. Rogers, and he would hand me out different slips of paper to go to the different departments. And by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they all tested me and send the results to him. And he would sit me down, and for 14 years, at the same routine, you know, Mr. Simonds, Dr. Rogers would say, you're a very healthy young man, except you had a hearing, and I would cut down on cigarettes if I were you. And here is a doctor with 2 hearing aids and an overflowing ashtray. I never said anything about that, but 14 years, that's what I went through there. I am now living in Akron, Ohio, but I'm still flying back to the New England Medical Center for my annual physicals, because the prejudice of a New Englander who thinks, what the hell do they know, anything west of the Hudson River? There's a big cowboy lot where they make movies. And so I would fly back to the New England Medical Center. And this is now the 15th year, or the 14th year. And I come to the eye department, everything's changed. The wallpaper, the furniture, the gal at the desk, who was an old buddy of mine by now, different. And I'm sitting there, and a young guy in a white doctor's coat with records coming towards me. He says, "You Simonds?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "What's the matter with your ear?" I said, "Doctor, you're a funny guy, but I just flew in from Akron, Ohio, for you to tell me." He says, "Well, it says here, aging of the auditory nerve. How old were you when this happened?" I says, 39. Shakes his head. "You were too young for aging the auditory nerve. You want to find out?" I said, "Sure, I want to find out. What do you think I'm here? I've been coming here 14 years to find out." He says, "It may not be easy." I said, "Well, you tell me what I have to do." He says, "You have to check in to the hospital when you can stay overnight, because I got to do tests in May. You have to stay overnight." Fine, whenever. In a week, I make the appointment, I go in the hospital, test day after day. On Thursday, he finally comes into my room, and he's got a handsome young doctor with him. He introduces me. He's a neurosurgeon. He says, "Well, I found what it is." He says, "You have an auditory neuroma." I said, "What the hell is that?" He says, "You have a tumor growing at the end of your auditory nerve, and it's lying on your brain stem, and it has to come out." He says, "About the size of a large piece of gravel right now, but we can't let it go any further, and Dr. whatever his name is going to take it out." And he turns around and he starts walking on. I, "Wait a minute." So this new doctor says, "Dave, can I call you Dave? You don't understand. That man walking out just saved your life." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Auditory neuromas," he says, "generally are not found until autopsy, when they grow to the size of an orange and wipe everything out." He says, "We'll get it out." Well, after 13 and a half hours on the operating table, the doctor got everything. And it wasn't the size of a large piece of gravel. It was already the size of a small crab apple, he said. Well, I tell you, lucky, lucky, lucky me. I went back to Akron, and he was so great and talented a doctor that with opening up my head and all through it, I didn't really feel any pain. He always had the painkiller adjusted properly, even when I got back to Akron, following his advice. I didn't have any pain. Naturally, they shaved my head, and afterwards, healing in Akron, I noticed something very strange happening. When I ate something I liked, I started tearing, and my nose, left nostril, started running. So I called him, "Hey, Doc, something's happening here." "Oh," he says, "that's nothing." He says, "We can fix that in a 2-hour procedure." I said, "No way, Doc. Are you going to get me on that table, I'll live with it. And I have till this day. It's there. Not as bad as it used to be, but it's still there. There's a funny story that goes with that. The sales force of the company I worked for these guys all over the country, traveled with them. And I used to present dog and pony shows at sales meetings, presentations of the advertising and all kinds of stuff like that. And at these annual sales meetings, not annual, they were more than, they were biannual. They would come from all over the country. And this time it was a plant in Mississippi where we were having this sales meeting. And why they knew that I had this operation, they had no idea that they had shaved my head. Consequently, I was very lucky when I got back to Akron. I found this guy who made me a wig that was unbelievable. It was different from the way I wore my hair, but essentially it is what my hair looks like today, because that's the kind of wig he made, and it was beautiful. Okay, so we got this big sales meeting coming up, and I'm ready to go back to work. And for my presentation, it was interesting. I had my friend Vic Johnson that I was still working with, who had great taste in making presentations. And what we decided, what we were selling was plastic, for furniture covering. And the plastics, we could emboss a leather pattern, a silk pattern, and every time we come out with a new pattern was a big event, and I had to take care of cutting samples for the salesman. I had presentation folders we'd mail out to furniture manufacturers. It was a big deal. Well, we were bringing out a new English leather pattern. So there were about 12 colors in the pattern. They were earth colors. So we decided to have a big box with a line, and I would pull out one sample at a time and throw it at the guys. I did 14 of these, and then my advertising I showed, and the presentation that we were going to mail, and then I start throwing these things at them, and I get through, and I say, "Gents, you know that I would give you my shirt off my back if I could, but instead I'm going to give you the hair off my head." And I took the wig and threw it at him. And Joe Grannon from Philadelphia, I wish I had a picture of what his face looked like when I got finished with that. Okay, that's the ear story.